You're listening to Across the Pond, a show about improving the lives of British expats living in America. Brought to you by Plan First Wealth.
Hi, Rich. How you doing, my friend?
Hello, Tom. I've got a bit of a cold or a flu.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm going to go with flu.
Okay.
Because I'm, weak and feeling sorry for myself.
Okay. You can see, you can hear it. You can hear it a little bit in your.
I'm on the mend as well. This is me on the mend. Thanksgiving weekend was a challenge.
Okay. Did you watch the England-USA game?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well done.
I was surprised by how good USA were, honestly.
Yeah, they were okay. It was a crap game, though, wasn't it? Really.
Well, I haven't seen them in years. I was surprised by how good they were. They couldn't score, which is the main problem, since I've learned. But they were. I was surprised by how good, and they're young. England were pretty poor, but then much better against Wales, right? So,
Yep. By the time this comes out, the World Cup will be over. So, I think we might have won.
Every 2 years, right? We're going to win Euros or the World Cup until we're not.
Yeah. There's a song about it. It's coming home. Okie dokie. So this podcast, what are we talking about?
UK state pension as a non-UK resident, which for our purposes means as a US resident.
Mm-hmm.
Do you qualify for it? What's it worth? Is it worth qualifying? Is it worth claiming WEP? Dirty WEP.
Mm-hmm.
And is it worth back paying and all that good stuff? So we shall do a UK pension for expats chat.
Yeah, it's probably the most read blog, or it is the most read blog on our website, and probably one of the questions we get asked most. So I am anticipating a lot of viewers tuning in for this one.
Oh, I thought you were say you were quivering. You're quivering in anticipation.
Well, there's actually some good stuff. There's some good stuff coming out of this one, actually, isn't there? Because we can hopefully get you to maximise your UK state pension, and we'll tell you how throughout this.
Yeah. Right. Well, okay. So let's start at the beginning. Do non-residents qualify? We still get asked. I've not been in the UK for years. Don't think I'll get a UK pension or state pension. And I usually say, no, you actually probably will. So first of all, just a technical point. We're talking about something called the new state pension, not the basic state pension. So I know that might sound like semantics, but basic state pension is for people, or for men born before 51 and women before 53. So that's kind of like still, relevant, but for most people we deal with, it's born after 51 and 53. This new state pension applies. So if you're listening to this and we're talking about the new state pension, if you hear me say basic state pension, it's a slip of the tongue. Old habits die hard. I'm talking about the new state pension, and the amounts and stuff are slightly different. So I don't want anyone to get tripped up by that. But assuming you were born after 51, or the 6th of April 51 or 53, we're talking about the new state pension. And if you worked in the UK for more than 10 years, or rather, if you paid national insurance contributions in the UK for at least 10 years, you will qualify, or you should qualify, for a state pension in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
It won't be very much, but it will be something. So don't think just because you haven't been there for 20 or 30 years, there is nothing. There very well might be. And we'll talk about how you can go about ascertaining that in a second.
I'd say certainly people that quite a lot of expats came over to the US, probably still employed by UK employers as well. So they could have had many more years where their employer was paying their state pension.
Yeah.
So you might have worked in the UK for maybe the first 10 years of your career, and you came to the US, but on a contract from a UK employer still, and they were still paying a UK state pension for another 5-10 years or so. So you may have a bigger pot.
I think it times out after. I don't think you can do that indefinitely. So maybe,
No,
but maybe a few years you can do it for.
Yeah. I think maybe back then I think there was
a
bit more leeway on that.
Yeah. But... Right. Yeah, absolutely. Right. So it might even be more than you think. But the flip side to that is your social security is probably going to be less than you think, because you wouldn't have been paying into social security at that time. But anyway, We'll be doing one on Social Security very soon. So you only have to wait a month or two to find out. Right. State pension, UK. So the maximum entitlement in the UK right now, so this is 22-23, if you have a full, what's it called? You have maximum years service, which is 35. You have 35 years paying in to national insurance. The maximum is £185.15 per week, right? If you were to take it, if you were drawing it this year, which is £9,627 per week, per year, which is like, I don't think that's going to change anyone's life, but it's a bit of beer money.
It is, yeah. Social Security, you get nearly 36,000.
It can be,
but then
right up there.
You've got health costs, which are different. But yes, it's not bad, is it? It's $12,500, $13,000 a year.
Well, you pay a lot less into it than Social Security as well. So you put less in, you get less out, but still, up nearly $10,000 in today's terms. And bear in mind that's inflation linked, and we'll talk about that in a second. But it's worth having if you're entitled to it. I would definitely argue.
Oh, yeah.
So if most of the time we meet people who haven't got 35 years because they've moved to the US at some point or elsewhere, and they've got 10, 15, 20 years, and back of a fag packet, you just, to work out what your entitlement would be, you'd take 20 35ths, 20 years, 35 is a maximum, 20 35ths, which is 4/7. I hope that's right. And that'll tell you what your rough entitlement would be. So if in that, I've got an example I got in front of me. If you had 15 years, 15 35ths or 3/7 of the maximum £185 is £79 a week.
If you were 15 years paying in.
If you had 15 years. Now, don't do a back of a fag packet, and because you're probably not even certain how many qualifying years you've got. Go to HMRC or .gov.uk website. Just type into Google or whichever search engine you use. Basic state pension forecast. You can sign up for a government gateway account. It takes like 5 minutes, if that. Assuming you've your national insurance number and your last UK address, can sometimes be a challenge, but most of the time it's relatively straightforward, and you can have a forecast on your screen in minutes. It's fantastic. It's one of the few things I will say that is good about the UK system there. And people, the age for claiming is going to be between 65 and 68.
Right, so that's when you can get it.
That's when you can get it. If you were born after the 5th of April 1978, then the age is 68. If you were born before that, it's like on a side. You'll be in a sliding scale between 65 and 68.
Okay.
Likely now 66 and 68. If you live outside the UK, you can start the application process 4 months before you're eligible, and you can have it paid every 4 or 13 weeks, and you can have it paid into non-UK accounts.
You can. We probably wouldn't advise to get it paid directly to a US bank account, though, would you? Because what would happen is that sterling would appear into a US bank account, and the bank would just use their standard FX conversion rate, and you'd probably pay 2 to 4% in fees. I would not recommend that.
Yeah, we would always really say you're best off having paid into a UK account and then transferring it over to the US when you need it, and using a FX service the way you'll get a better rate. To your point, it's simple as that.
Yeah.
I will just add to that, though, we occasionally come across people who think that having it paid to a UK account means it's not declarable or taxable in the US, and it's definitely not the case. Worldwide income, ladies and gents. I think we talked about that in our last podcast. As a US person, you are eligible to declare and pay tax on your worldwide income, including state pension, even if it's not subject to tax in the UK, which it probably won't be, even if you're in the UK, because it's the personal allowance in the UK is about £12,000, I think. So a state pension will always come in under that. So they always pay out at gross, I think.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Doesn't mean it's not taxable. Just means it's under the personal allowance, and it's definitely taxable in the US. But if you have other pension income, so a SIP or UK pension, getting paid through PAYE, you're going to want an NT tax code, non-taxpayer code, to avoid emergency tax and just tax being held at source in the UK that you're going to have to claim back and go through all that rigmarole. Again, see an earlier podcast on that. It's quite a process, but it's definitely worth being aware of and getting out ahead of if you can.
Yeah.
Ooh, I'm bouncing around a bit here. The triple lock. So we talked before about state pension being inflation protected, and that means it goes up, with inflation. Before you take benefits, that £185 I quoted, that will go up between now and you retire, and then it will go up once you retire or start drawing on it with inflation. But it's better than that. So the UK state benefits are subject to something called, or benefit from something called, known as the triple lock. And this is where benefits increase by the highest of earnings, growth in wages, inflation, CPI, or a minimum of 2.5%. So whatever's the highest is what you get, which is
generous.
Very generous. It's a massive political hot potato. It obviously costs the government a load of money. They want to get rid of it. But unsurprisingly, it's very popular amongst grey-haired voters. I think I would be very popular for me as well.
I think if I was in my 60s, 70s, 80s, or that age, then I might be voting in favour of whoever was going to keep that in.
Yeah.
However, it might not stay around. It probably, by the time someone's listening to this in the future, who knows, it might not even exist anymore. But
right, so I think it'll always be inflation linked. Whether the triple lock will exist forever is hard to say.
Yeah.
And I will just add that that's not an automatic benefit. There are people living in other countries throughout the world who don't enjoy an inflationary increase. There has to be a bilateral reciprocal agreement in place for the country where you're resident. The US has one, so us in the US, we will benefit from inflation protection. But not everyone is entitled to that. So that's just something to bear in mind if anyone's listening to this from elsewhere.
Yeah. So what? So they could receive their £9,000 a year, but it's locked.
Flat.
It's flat. It's never going to go up. And
Yeah,
to put that into context,
so,
the basic state pension went up by 10% in the last 12 months.
10%.
10.1%.
10%.
It's generous.
Wow. If we watch this back, if we're watching this back in a number of years, I mean, I assume we'll have re-recorded it, but can you imagine us reminiscing on 10% inflation?
No one would have forecasted that a few years ago. And to put it into context,
yeah.
defined benefit, like company pensions, they also inflate pension increases, don't they? So you get a final salary pension from a pension company, and that will go up, but it'll be capped. And it will be capped at some of them 2.5%, some generous ones maybe 5%. So other pensions go up 2.5% max, or 5% maybe. The state pension going up 10.1 is...
They're capped at 2.5%?
Some of them are, yeah.
Wow. That's not been good this year then, has it?
No.
Imagine if you're in a defined benefit pension in pounds this year that's capped at 2.5%.
And you're
inflation's
retiring
10,
in the US.
You've gone up at 2.5%. You live in dollars, and the value of your defined benefit pension's fallen by 15-20%. Ouch. Okay, so that's the state pension. There's a very good chance if you're listening to this and you've worked in the UK that you may qualify and you may be eligible to receive some benefits. So you can go, we've got a blog, we've got a load of links, that are useful resources for you to go and sign up to the government gateway and find out what you're entitled to, and also investigate back paying or making contributions going forward. So we get this all the time, right? So one, am I even eligible for anything? Two, I see I've got an option to back pay and make payments going forward. Should I? What's called voluntary contributions. Should I? So if someone's got, like the example I used before, someone's got 15 years, what they can do is I think you can back pay up to 6 years, and then you can pay going forwards. So you can immediately go from 15 to 21, and then maybe however many years you got before you start claiming, you could maybe get it up to 25 years or whatever. Right? Should you though? That's the question we always get. Is it worth it? And I guess we think it might well be worth it.
Yeah. It's a facts and circumstances, but
yes,
if you're in good health and you've got liquidity, you've got some means, you've got some cash in the bank, then it's certainly worth looking
right. How long are you going to live?
Yeah,
that's a question. But then let's add some more context to that. So, how do you back pay? How do you make these voluntary contributions? Well, you do it online, but there's two sorts. There's two classes of contributions: Class 2 and Class 3. Now, go onto our website, or go even better, go onto HMRC's website and have a look at these differences between Class 2 and Class 3. These are for if you're living and working abroad, or living abroad and not working. Now, I'm not going to tell you which one you should be paying. Class 2 is negligible. It's £3.15 a week, £163, £164 a year, basically,
so
to make a contribution.
So if you pay £164, you get one additional year. So if you're on your 21 years, you could, to go up to 22, it would cost you £164.
Or unless you're paying one of the back years, but yeah,
okay.
You're going back 1 year. But yeah, essentially, and still to the point, you're buying an extra year regardless. So yeah, sorry, that was a unnecessary pedantic point I made there. But,
okay.
So you're making 164 to be, just in case anyone is a real stickler, £163.80 to buy a year. This is right now in 22-23. Class 3 though is much more. Class 3 is £15.85 a week, which is £824 a year. Again, to buy that year, whether you're buying a back year or you're paying, this current year. If you're doing it in 22-23, it would be £824. Now, I think most of our clients would hopefully qualify for Class 2 because that's living and working abroad. And then there is some other qualifying information about you were working in the UK just before you left. But I think, again, most people we come into contact with will qualify for that, but not all. Mm-hmm. Some will definitely have to pay Class 3, and it's not. I don't think we can tell anyone really. I think you can make a determination, but the best way to confirm it is to actually call HMRC, describe your situation, and in my experience, they will advise you or tell you which one you should be contributing to: Class 2, Class 3. Mm-hmm. Class 2 is way more attractive, but it might not be an option.
Yeah, we've definitely had clients do Class 2 or Class 3, haven't we?
Yeah, I've come across. Yeah, absolutely. So, should you though? And the answer to that is, how long are you going to live? Well, we said let's work on Class 3 for a second here. So Class 3, you're going to have to pay £824 to buy a year. Mm-hmm. And every year you buy essentially adds a year to your entitlement, and that year is roughly about in today's terms, £275 income. So it'd be the equivalent of £275 in whenever you start taking it. So you pay £824 now, and whenever you start drawing benefits, you get the equivalent of £275 back each year.
Inflation linked.
So inflation linked, yeah. So it's the equivalent of £275. So it's always it's whatever £275 is today, whatever it is in the future. So you do the maths. You have to live about just over 3 years to be quids in the money. So if you plan on taking benefits and living 3 years, Oh, do you know what we didn't talk about, Tom? Sorry, just jump around here. We didn't talk about if you defer your benefit. So if you delay taking your state pension, you can it increases by 1% every 9 weeks up to a maximum of 5%. So you can just not, if you don't want it at 67 or whenever it is you're eligible for at 68, you can just let it run and it will get larger. But anyway, sorry, back to the matter at hand. So you're eligible for Class 3. You pay £824. You buy a year, and when you retire, that year will pay you £275 each year. So you pass away before your state pension, then obviously it was not a good investment. You live 20 years when you start taking it, a very good investment. And that's Class 3. If you're paying Class 2, well then, it's basically 1 year. I hesitate to say this, but it's a no-brainer.
Yeah. So we encourage, don't we, all of our clients to look at it, go onto the government gateway ID, log in, check their state pension, get a status update of where they're at the moment, and then
I mean, if nothing else, just a factor what you're entitled to into your plan. But ideally, to see, should we be making contributions? Should we be maximising it? There's a wrinkle with this being in America, and that is something called the Windfall elimination provision, WEP. This is going to be, we're going to cover this when we talk about Social Security in a month or so. And long story short, your Social Security can be and may well be reduced because you're entitled to a state pension. Now, you should still claim your state pension. It says on a sliding scale, but the maximum it can be reduced by is 50% of your state pension. So if you're entitled to $5,000 a year state pension, your WEP can reduce your Social Security by up to maximum of $2,500 a year. Okay, so that would make it less attractive. It will make it maximum. It might make that 3 year, in the money calculation we did. It might make it 6 years, which I still think is a good deal. And that's assuming the max WEP applies, and that's assuming that you don't pay Class 2. Class 2 is still a no-brainer, whether WEP applies or not. So it's just something to be mindful of, something to be aware of. It takes everyone by surprise. Everyone hates it. It makes people very angry. I totally get it. Makes me a little bit angry. And it was up for a debate recently. Was it in front of the Supreme Court recently, or it's in Congress?
It is, yeah.
I don't know.
I think it might be in the Supreme Court. I think it got through Congress. I think it might be next stage. So who knows if WEP will still be around in a few years' time. But it is a nasty surprise because no one really knows about it. You don't really find out until you're due to receive your Social Security pension, and you tick a box saying, I am entitled to receive another government state pension. And they go, okay, your reduction is going to be $3,000.
Yeah.
And that's a good trip away, isn't it? For a couple, a retired couple, $3,000 they were expecting a year. But either way, topping up your UK state pension can offset that. So you could maximise your UK state pension to offset a WEP reduction, even though kind of ironically it's increasing it at the same time. But
contracted out. Sometimes people will mention state pension. People say, "Oh no, I contracted out," and contracting out, as I understand it, was a thing from the 80s and 90s. So they use on top of this basic state pension, and I do mean the basic state pension here because I'm talking, the days of yonder or the days of yore. You could. There was something called SERPs and then the state second pension, and I believe these sat on top of the basic state pension, and there were additional state-sponsored, state-led schemes. And if you were a member of an occupational pension scheme, usually defined benefit, although not necessarily, I think you could contract out of these second tier of pensions, and those contributions would go into your occupational pension. So you could contract out, and those benefits will be in your occupational pension. Often you'll see it on a statement saying contracted out benefits. But that usually does not mean you were contracted out of the basic pension, or the new state pension, as we now call it. So if you were contracted out, don't automatically assume that means you have no entitlement. Your entitlement might be reduced, but it might still it should well be there still.
Yeah. So go to the gov.uk website and get your personalised estimate of what you're due to receive.
Loads of links in our blogs.
Correct, on our website
to help you. To go to the HMRC website, but also to go to other people who talk about this. We've got, as we keep talking about, we'll be talking about related topics as part of this series. Social Security and WEP is next, and Medicare, which is less relevant, but still part state benefits. And if this is a whole series of stuff that we're doing. So if this is of interest, please check us out on YouTube, on podcasts. Go to our website. There's a whole calendar of stuff that we've selected the topics that we think most relevant or impactful for British expatriates living in America, and we're tackling them one by one.
We are. And we've recently launched a Facebook community group for Brits in America as well. So
Yes.
Plan First Wealth Hub. If you want to go find
Plan
us.
First Wealth Hub, and we will be doing a monthly Q&A in there. So if you have questions, queries, concerns, worries, don't know where to get the answers from, spending too much time on the message boards or on the internet where there's a lot of different answers, come ask us. We'll answer if we can. If we can't, we'll try and find the answer and come back to you.
Yeah, maybe they're shouting at this podcast saying, sorry, repeat that again? Or what did you mean by that? Then come join us on our Q&A, done monthly in the Wealth Hub on Facebook. And we'll see you there. Thanks for listening to this episode of Across the Pond. This podcast is brought to you by Plan First Wealth. For more information about Plan First Wealth and Across the Pond, visit us at planfirstwealth.com. If you like this episode, consider sharing it with fellow Brits across the US. You can subscribe to future episodes in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. The information in this podcast is educational and general in nature and does not take into consideration the listener's personal circumstances. Therefore, is not intended to be a substitute for specific, individualized financial, legal, or tax advice. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a final decision.